When we need to seam knitted panels or squares to make a blanket, a poncho, a scarf, or any other reversible project, the basic mattress stitch is not a good option. It is bulky and it doesn't look nice on the other side of the work. In projects that do not have a wrong side, it is better to make a flat seam that looks the same on both sides. We've already discussed a perfect way to join panels made in garter stitch, and I'm going to leave the link to that tutorial in the video description. But what to do if the panels or squares we plan to join are made in a different stitch pattern? In this case, we could get some help from baseball stitch, a stitch that is commonly used to make, well, baseballs. And in this tutorial, I'll show you how it works. First, place two knitted panels side by side and cut a piece of yarn that is at least 8 times as long as the length of the future seam. And then thread this yarn into a wool needle. I have a fairly long piece of yarn over here because this seam takes up a lot of yarn. And I'm going to use yarn in a contrasting color to help you better see what's going on and how the seam is worked. But you can choose to do the same and use yarn in a contrasting color to join pieces of your project. Because even though this seam is flat and reversible and stretchy and secure, it is not invisible. You can actually see the seam after it is completed. And that's not a bad thing. It does not look ugly. It still looks nice, but it is visible. And we can turn it into a benefit if we use yarn in a contrasting color. And actually, that's what they do when they make baseballs. The seam is usually made in a contrasting color. So whether you decide to use the yarn in a contrasting color or not, it's up to you, but here's how the seaming happens. First, insert the tip of the wool needle from back to front under the strand at the very corner of the piece at the right side of the work. Then pull the yarn through, leaving a small tail. The tail should be long enough to comfortably weave it in later on. That's it. Then do the same to the piece at the left side of the work. So we go back to front under the strand that is at the very corner of this piece. And pull the yarn through. Don't pull it too tight. The seam should be flat and relaxed. It does not have to be really jammed. So be very careful about not pulling the yarn too tight. So now actually seaming. We're gonna join spots that are 1 stitch away from the edge of each of these pieces. So it's gonna be 1 stitch away over here and over here, and 1 row away from the previous worked spot, the spot that already has yarn in it, the spot that's already been seamed. So in this case, we'll start with the piece at the right side of the work, and we insert the needle always from back to front. So we go back to front into the spot that is 1 stitch away from the edge, and the spot at the very bottom, the one that is between the cast on edge, in this case, between the edge and the first row. So we go in here and then pull the yarn through. Again, remember not to pull it too tight. The pieces should be joined, but the edges should not be crammed together. And then we do the same thing with the piece at the left side of the work. So we go 1 stitch away from the edge and insert the needle from back to front, always from back to front, into the spot that is between the edge and the first row. And pull the yarn through. And we keep doing that. So we go into spots that are 1 row up from the previously worked spot. So we go, and again 1 stitch away. So we go 1 stitch away, 1 row up, back to front, pull the yarn through. Then the piece on the left, 1 stitch away, 1 row up, pull the yarn through. Keep the seam flat, so don't pull it too tight. And then keep going. 1 row up here and 1 row up there. Here and there. And as you see, the seam hides the edges. So that's another good thing about this seam. If you know that you plan to use baseball stitch to join pieces later on, then you don't have to worry about the edges. You don't have to make them nice. As you see, my edges are not perfect, far from that. They are kind of uneven even. I don't worry about that because I know the seam will hide all the imperfections. So no need for salvages, no need for any additional beautifying the edges because they will be hidden inside the seam. And that's a good thing, right? One less worry for us. Now that we stitch a little bit, I'll show you how it looks. So as you see, it is quite nice looking. It is visible, no questions about that, but it looks nice. And it is completely flat. If you look at it from this angle, you will see that there is no bulk at all over here. So it doesn't add any bulk. And it looks the same on both sides of the work. So it is the same crisscross pattern on this side and on that side, so it looks exactly the same. And it is also secure, so you can tell that it is really, our knitting is not falling apart anytime soon if we use this seam to join our knitted pieces. And we can also go into spots, that's a variation that you might want to use, into spots that are 2 rows away from each other. So instead of going into this spot that is 1 row away, then we skip 1 row and go into the spot that is 2 rows away. And do it the same way. So we go 1 stitch away and we go always from back to front. But we join it so that each stitch is 2 rows away from the previous stitch, just like this. This makes the seam looser and the stitches are not as jammed and crammed, but it also makes it less secure. So as you see, you can see the holes over here. So it's a good option if you're looking for a decoration, not so good option if you're looking for a nice secure seam. And even that is not all. We can also use the same seam to join cast on and bind off edges to make it a horizontal seam. In this situation, we would go 1 stitch away. So we'll go 1 stitch away from the previous spot and we would go 1 row away from the edge. So here you have it, a beautiful seam, really beautiful, nice looking seam that is flat, that is stretchy, and that is completely reversible. The seam also works well for making small clothing repairs. You can use it to fix holes and rips in any kinds of fabrics, both knitted and woven. I use it all the time to mend socks and t-shirts. To read this tutorial as a set of step-by-step photo instructions, follow the link in the description. To download it as a PDF, join the club or our community on Patreon. Thank you for watching this video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next tutorial.